In Newark, New Jersey, therapist Rose Cotter thinks she understands fear. She spent her life treating it in others. What she doesn't know is that a single session, one patient, and one smile will trap her inside a nightmare that no one else can see. It starts like any other day in Newark, New Jersey. The lights turn softly in the sterile corridors of a psychiatric ward, where therapist Dr. Rose Cotter moves through the halls with quiet determination. She's calm, competent, and a professional who's seen her share of broken minds. Rose enters a room to meet her next patient, Laura Weaver, a trembling PhD student whose eyes dart toward every corner like she's expecting something to leap from the shadows. Laura explains, haltingly, that she recently saw her professor take his own life right in front of her, and ever since, she's been haunted by something she can't escape, an invisible presence that hides behind smiling faces. Rose tries to keep it together, telling herself it's just another patient, but the way Laura keeps saying something's always smiling at her makes the room feel a little too quiet. Laura's panic spikes. She screams, clutching her throat as if something unseen is strangling her. Rose leaps to call for help, but then, suddenly, Laura goes still. Her expression softens into a wide, unnatural smile, and before Rose can move, Laura ends her own life right there in the room. For a second, the whole world just stops, and Rose can't move or even breathe. What kind of smile could feel that calm and still feel so completely wrong? The next day, Rose tries to push the horror aside. She returns to work, though her hands still tremble when she holds her clipboard. She's a bit freaked out, but pushing through that, she meets another patient, Carl, who mumbles darkly in his sleep. Then Carl's eyes snap open, and that same impossible calm crosses his face as he smiles, just like Laura did, whispering that she's going to die. Rose gasped and called for the nurses, but when they rushed in, Carl was fast asleep, like nothing had ever happened, and he hadn't said a single word. What on earth? Her supervisor, Dr. Morgan Desai, sees her shaking and insists she take time off. Rose agrees, though her mind races. How could Carl know? Why that same smile? Back at home, Rose tried to calm herself down. Trevor wanted to help, but how could she even explain that kind of dread crawling under her skin? She kept thinking she was seeing things, shadows that shifted when she blinked, and faces that didn't look quite right. Wondering if it was all in her head, she visits her therapist. Maybe Dr. Madeline Northcott could help. Madeline listened as Rose opened up old wounds, her mother's overdose, the guilt she'd never really shaken, the feeling that maybe she could have saved her. Madeline suggested it might all be trauma replaying itself through hallucinations. Maybe, but then again, maybe not. Rose tries to be normal. She buys her young nephew, Jackson, a toy train for his birthday, a small act of love in a world that's starting to feel unreal. The birthday party was typically loud and bright, laughter bouncing off of the walls, and for a second, Rose almost believed things were finally normal again. Jackson tore the paper off her gift, grinning, until the room went completely still. Everyone stared at the box. It wasn't a toy inside. It was something small, still, and horribly familiar. Her cat, Mustache. Screams filled the room as Rose stumbled back, her heart pounding, swearing she didn't do it. People were shouting, faces blurring in panic. And then she saw her, someone standing across the room, perfectly still, wearing that same awful knowing smile that didn't belong to anyone human. Rose falls backwards, crashing into a glass coffee table as the world spins. Blood trickles down her arm, but all she can see is that smile burning into her mind. After the incident, Trevor watched her with a mix of pity and fear. He didn't believe in curses, only in breakdowns. Right now, he was sure Rose was in the middle of a breakdown. What if Laura was right, though? What if it isn't madness? Rose decides to investigate. She learns that Laura's professor, the one who took his life, was also smiling before he died, and that he had witnessed someone else's suicide just days earlier. The pattern stuck in her head, and it won't let go. Everyone who sees someone die ends up dying the same way a few days later, with that same creepy smile on their face. Running out of options, Rose decides to track down the professor's wife, Victoria. She answers the door looking drained, eyes hollow, like she's been carrying a secret too heavy to tell. She says her husband started seeing things before he died, something that looked like people, but wasn't. Rose's stomach twists. This isn't random, it's a chain, and she's the next link. How do you break something that feeds on fear itself? Rose reaches out to her ex-boyfriend Joel, now a police detective. Despite their complicated history, Joel helps her dig through police records. Together, they find case after case, suicides that all share the same eerie detail: a smiling witness who dies shortly after. Dozens of names, one continuous line of horror. Rose realizes she has less than a week. But then, Rose finds something that doesn't fit the pattern. One man actually survived this whatever it is, a convict named Robert Talley, who's sitting in prison for murder, someone who killed and somehow lived to tell the story. Rose and Joel visit the prison, and inside those gray walls, Robert starts to shake the moment he sees her. He doesn't even need to ask why she is there, because he can already see the same fear in her eyes that once lived in his. He explains that the thing, whatever it is, feeds on trauma. It needs witnesses, and the only way to escape is to make someone else watch a brutal act, to pass the curse on through horror. Rose stepped back, feeling sick to her core. She couldn't do it. She wasn't going to become a murderer, no matter what it cost her. But when Robert realizes she's cursed, he panics. He screams for her to leave. He can see it on her. Rose walks out, shaken and scared. The thing is real. She knows that now. But maybe there's another way to stop it. A way that doesn't mean hurting anyone. Back home, Rose's world keeps fracturing. The phone rings, but when she answers, there's only her own voice echoing back. Trevor watches her with fear, his love replaced by quiet distance. He calls Madeline for help, behind her back, and that betrayal snaps something inside Rose. She storms out, furious, heartbroken, convinced she can trust no one. She drives to her sister Holly's house, hoping for comfort. Instead, she's met with judgment. Holly says Rose sounds just like her mother did before she died. Rose ended up arguing with Holly, words spilling out before she could stop them. She told her sister she had left her alone to deal with their mother's madness. The air went still after that, both of them frozen in silence. Later, Rose drove through the night, tears blurring her vision, thoughts spinning out of control. That evening, her therapist Madeline came by for a session, or at least that's what Rose thought. She let her in, but something felt off. Madeline's movements were too slow, her smile too fixed. Then the phone rang. Rose answered and heard Madeline's voice on the other end, calling from her office. She turned. The woman sitting in her living room wasn't her therapist. Panicking, Rose grabbed a knife and sped to the hospital. She saw Carl standing in the hallway, smiling just like Laura had. Without thinking, she lunged at him. There was blood, screaming, and then nothing. She woke up in her car, the knife in her lap, Morgan banging on the window, looking terrified. Rose drove off before he could stop her. There was only one piece left, the old family house. Dust floated in the stale air. Everything looked the same as the night her mother died. Rose walked through the rooms, her chest tightening as memories came back. The locked door, her mother's voice begging for help, the fear that kept her frozen. She whispered that it wasn't her fault, but she still felt the weight of guilt. She decided to end the curse by dying alone so it couldn't pass on. The house stayed quiet until she heard a familiar voice call her name. Her mother stood in the doorway, pale and smiling. Rose told herself it wasn't real, but when the voice accused her of letting her die, the smile twisted and the figure lunged. The thing took her mother's form and dragged her through the burning house in the firelight. It revealed its true shape, a tall, skinless creature, its face splitting into layers of smiling mouths. Rose trembled, but managed to light a match. The fire spread, and she collapsed as the monster screamed in the flames. For a moment, she believed it was over. Then, the scene changed. She wasn't outside. She was in Joel's apartment. He was there, smiling at her. The fire, the escape, it had all been another illusion. The entity wasn't gone. In reality, Joel had found her at the old house. He called her name from outside, but inside, she was already lost. The thing loomed over her, forcing her mouth open before crawling inside. Joel broke down the door and froze. Rose stood before him, calm and smiling, holding a match. She lit it. Flames rose as Joel stared in horror. The curse passed to him. In the fire, Rose's voice echoed faintly, asking over and over, "What are you?" There was no answer, just soft, distant laughter. And somewhere in the darkness, another smile began to form. Not sure about this film? Was this a bit too weird, even for me? Let us know your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed diving into this crazy ride of paranoia, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More horrors await.